Hello, this is Cindy McDaniel, and I'd like to review with you the SWOT analysis for Coastal Medical Center. And we can move on to our next slide. We're on slide 2, and the first thing is, what is a SWOT? So for Coastal Medical Center, we're going to look at the SWOT analysis as an internal review of the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities for growth as it relates to our ever-changing environmental forces and threats. A SWOT analysis provides valuable insight to incorporate into the strategic planning process, and it really creates a roadmap for the organization to define their long-term and short-term goals and successes. It's an investigation and a collection of critical pieces of data and facts that can be utilized to define what the future is going to be. And it's the first step to really developing a realistic, refined, and flexible working plan to maintain the balance of the organization with the external environment. We're on slide 3, which is our SWOT analysis, and we're going to look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of CMC. And first, let's start with the strengths, and that is the rich history of growth and positive market share, successful new business initiatives that they have started, and CMC has hired a new transformational CEO. And let's look at our weaknesses. Our weaknesses for CMC is limited to financial resources. It has a disjointed organizational structure with 2 boards, and it has labor management, culture issues, quality of service, and there's no value-based purchasing. And then when we look at our opportunities, which there are many opportunities that CMC can begin to embark upon, and some of that involves with the improvement of the financial position, improve quality and efficiency, and integrate care to achieve market leadership. And then the threats are government regulations, of course, as they are changing, and union demands, and the organization currently has 3 unions in place. And then the community perception of CMC, particularly during this past year since their bond rating has went down, and that has affected their credit rating, which will impact the projects and the completion for changes that they have on those projects. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Strengths. Let's drill down a little bit more on the strengths of the organization. Coastal Medical Center offers, again, as I said, the rich history of growth and financial stability from a visionary leader, and that was Mr. Wilson, who had been at the helm for 20 years. He really grew the hospital from a small hospital to the large tertiary hospital that it is today. And CMC offers a high intensity of services such as open heart surgery, liver, and transplants. And then it has a market advantage of substance abuse, psychiatric, pediatrics, and obstetrics. We're on slide 5, and we're going to drill down a little bit more on the strengths. Right now, we see that we have a new CEO, a new transformational CEO, and that's Mr. Richard Reynolds. And he comes with a great deal of expertise. He offers knowledgeable insight. He has quickly assessed the organizational profile, and he's identified numerous issues that he can move from to develop a strategic plan. And he has the ability to really grow the organization and bring them to, have them become more of an integrated system. We'll move on to slide 6. Let's look at the market share for CMC. You'll notice on this slide that CMC is running 18%. It comes in second to Johnson Memorial Hospital. Or Johnson Memorial Center, and it's just a few points ahead with a profit margin of $15 million, and it also has $70 million in reserves, and it runs around 74% occupancy. Then you also have Lutheran Memorial Center, which is just below CMC in the marketplace. It has a profit margin of 2%. It generally runs around 75% occupancy, and it offers more indigent care. So when you're looking at market share, certainly CMC can look out to all the other hospitals that make up 45% of the market share. Then it can pull from that and increase its market share. Now last year, unfortunately, the hospital lost $16 million in 2015, but you can look at it's well positioned in the area where there's a population growth a population that's 995,000, and it also has a 15% per capita increase that is expected from 2015 to 2020. So there's certainly opportunities to improve their market share here. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. To complement market share, let's look at what CMC is already doing in terms of successful new business initiatives. Right now, they are receiving referrals from a prominent orthopedic physicians group, and that physicians group is already aligned with the hospital to some degree because they're leasing hospital-owned the medical office building. So we can continue on with that service line, so there's opportunities to expand in the market. Let's move on to the next slide. CMC has already made plans to complement what they're doing as far as the pipeline with the orthopedic surgeries and bringing on or onboarding a physical therapy clinic in the next year. And the projections for that outpatient therapy clinic is expected to run around $250,000. So that will be a good start to complement the rehab center that they already have and embark a little bit more on the service line with orthopedics. So we're going to move on to slide 9. We're on slide 9, which is weaknesses that we're going to discuss in regard to CMC, and these are the internal organizational weaknesses. And you will notice here that I have divided this out into 5 columns of weaknesses. First, you've got your financial, your limited financial resources, which mostly we're talking about capital there, and then disjointed organizational structure, and the labor management culture issues, and then the quality. So if we'll go back over here to financial, we'll discuss this one first. And let's look at the past. In the past 3 years, we've had a CEO that really wasn't paying close attention to the financials. And so this past year, there was a negative 13.6 operating margin. And its compromised cash flow is 63.4 days, which is cash in hand. And CMC has had a downgraded bond, which now is the lowest credit rating. So that's really going to affect their ability to borrow money and do some other things in terms with capital, which is the next one. We're going to talk a little bit, it just lacks the capital approval process. So there's a lot of it's overextended itself in terms of 53 projects and 66 special programs because of this lack of capital approval. And with that, they really needed to look at, how can they support that over years that it may take for something to actually have a return on investment. There's also no value purchasing, and the patient mix is out of balance to even support the cash flow needs of the organization. So these are huge weaknesses that must be addressed fairly quickly. And they should be addressed by one board, and that's the next one, is the disjointed organizational structure, which it has 2 conflicting boards, and you really can't accomplish any type of innovation with 2 boards perhaps working against each other. So the biggest weakness is trying to get that under one umbrella or one organizational structure. And in regard to the board, there's no mechanism to attract the unique risk-taker talent that's needed at the moment. There's no succession plan, and there's really no diversity to the board. So let's look over here at the labor management issues. right now, one of the big ones is, there's just really no centralized HR, and there's a duplicate HR function. There's no internal oversight of the 3 active unions. Some of that has been consulted and outsourced, and that really needs to be brought under the HR function, even if they do utilize some outsourcing. The 100 FTEs that's over budget, that's an issue that they will need to bring in line in terms of their weaknesses. And they have paid out traditionally higher management dollars and benefits above those of the standards that's within the industry. And even doing all of that, and even with all this extra FTEs, the staff and the physicians are dissatisfied. So those are things that need to be addressed. And then we will go over here and we look at quality of the hospital. Certainly cardiology, it would be a great service line, but their cardiology is off on 4 out of 7 national benchmarks. And plus, the hospital runs 6% higher on the national benchmark for patients leaving the ER. That is very problematic because if the patients are leaving the ER right off the bat, they're not happy, and you're wanting to connect more with your community, and it's also affecting your revenue because these patients may be patients that need to be admitted or referred to someone else within the integrated service lines that they offer. And then also the hospital is below the national benchmarks on a couple of other key areas, which is surgeries, strokes, and infections. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Let's drill down just a little farther and look at the physician engagement weaknesses, because certainly that's an area that that the hospital is going to need to address. And it's particularly with the specialty physicians, they are dissatisfied, and CMC's admissions for specialty physicians have been declining, resulting in decreasing in flat referrals. And there's been difficulty between the physicians cooperating with the board. There's certainly a lack of open communication and input from the physicians, and there's clearly no innovation. So this poor relationship among the specialty physicians has created a high length of stay. The physicians' quality issues need to be addressed. There's no team efforts towards operational efficiencies. The physicians aren't wanting to be educated on certain issues. They don't use the CMC diagnostics, and actually they have previously had an agreement to use those, yet they went out on their own and set up their own operations for them for these types of diagnostics. And then we also need to look at the fact that 90% of these physicians also have privileges in competing hospitals. And so those hospitals, they're offering more attractive salaries to them and incentives such as priority scheduling and special arrangements, which, those are legal. So we need to, as a hospital, be offering some of the same things and really look at what can we do to keep the physicians happy and have them involved, in which will ultimately, improve the innovative efforts going on in CMC. And so therefore this is a key area of weakness that needs to be addressed very soon. Let's look at opportunities for CMC in terms of business development and strategies. And we've got a couple of areas here. The first area of improvement is for the financial position. We can improve the financial condition by reorganizing the central billing, working to reduce the days receivable outstanding to less than 50, and improve the case mix with the orthopedic surgeries. Those were dropped off before, but it looks like, with the pipeline that's been established with the orthopedic physician group, that should be able to improve that case mix. And then analyze selling some of the subsidiaries. For instance, there may be an opportunity to sell 2 of the Medicaid-only nursing homes that operate outside the main service area, which is about an hour outside the area, and they're not actually getting direct admissions from that area. And then they could possibly move the 3rd nursing home in terms of the beds, move that to the rehab center to complement the orthopedic service line that they're working on with the therapy and the rehab, and really bring the economies of scale up in that particular building. And the second part is to improve the quality and efficiency of the hospital and the organization, across all service lines, to improve the relationships with specialty physicians and cut those extra FTEs, and improve the wait times by 20% in the ER. And then implement a centralized electronic ordering system. This will certainly improve efficiencies if the surgeries are starting on time because they have the supplies and things that they need in place and they know where to find them. And then another opportunity would be to reduce the home health services from the 8 counties that they currently have into a tri-county area, and really focus on the FTEs that they are cutting in other areas, offer those full-time positions to the home health and really complement that in the community. And then utilize the medical enterprise subsidiary to expand the technology throughout the organization. They have quite a bit of money invested in that, and it's something that can be utilized perhaps to wire the whole organization versus the narrow focus that it has right now. And so the third opportunity that I've outlined here is to improve the improvements for integrating care, and that's to really integrate the organizational structure under one umbrella. We talked about the 2 boards earlier and how we really just need to have a structure where everyone knows who the leadership is and the oversight, and that there's not conflicting interest involved, and that this should be able to provide growth for the market. And they could expand, their plan to expand could be as 22%, which would put them above their competitor. And then also in terms of integrating, CMC can align with the Northwest Clinic, HMO, and the wellness with the pain clinic to develop some population health initiatives. And they already have some of this in place. They just need to kind of realign what they're going to do with the community needs. And then also there's a joint venture potential there with other hospitals to develop community programs. And JMC, that would be a very good opportunity because they have money in their treasurer's chest, so to speak, because they have 70 million in reserves that we discussed earlier. So these are all opportunities for CMC to get back on track and get the organization moving forward. So let's move on to our next slide. So additional opportunities, let's just define, is to really focus on building a safe environment. The MD privileges and monitoring quality, and promote physician alignment with our mission to improve the employee relationships, quality first initiatives, and to foster innovation through intelligent risk taking. To review the threats here, we have government regulations and pay for performance. And then we also have the human resources, and I said the union demands really is under the human resources because those are outside threats that we don't really know how those unions will react. So what we do internally will certainly affect those external union demands. And then the potential for negative community perception, and that's based on the fact that the quality has not been there, their service lines have not been meeting the national average benchmarks, and then the credit rating impact on the capital projects that they already have rolling out. And plus you also have your competition in terms of the competition of JMC is they've already put some things in motions in terms of their own organization to streamline and restructure. So they are ahead on the competition and going into it, and they also have $70 million in reserves and 6% growth that really can make a difference for how competitive they are going to be. So these are the areas that need to be addressed in the strategic plan. And to end the presentation, I'm just going to review a timeline that I think would be good for the organizational strategy and action plans. And we can just kind of look where we're at right now. It's 2015. We've hired a new CEO, and the SWOT analysis has been completed. And also the new CEO did some other analysis of the company. So you're really set up here I've laid this out for approximately a year because it takes a while to get really action plans going, the business plan. You notice the next month if they could work on establishing one governing board. That would be a very first step. And then after that, go ahead and work on updating the budgets and the new business plan. And then implement, your capital reallocations as they determine to what will be appropriate based on the new leadership. And then launch workforce initiatives and engagements. And then later in the year, as they move along with some of these plans and action plans, from these initiatives, they can review and update the organizational strategy with the initiatives. So this is the end of my SWOT analysis. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to the strategies that will come out of this. And please note the final references for the SWOT analysis. Thank you.